Welcome, everyone, to this emergency deep dive. We are standing at the precipice of what is undoubtedly the most seismic geopolitical earthquake of the 21st century. The Middle East, a region long defined by proxy wars, fragile truces, and simmering tensions, has just been irrevocably altered. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader of the Islamic Republic of Iran, the man who has wielded absolute, uncompromising power for over 3.5 decades, is dead. He was killed not by natural causes, not by internal revolution, but in a massive, unprecedented, and highly coordinated daytime airstrike carried out jointly by the United States of America and the State of Israel. This is not a rumor. This is not unverified speculation. Iranian state media, after hours of steadfast denial and claims that the supreme leader had been moved to a secure location, broke into their broadcasts early Sunday morning to confirm the unthinkable for the regime. President Donald Trump addressed the world, announcing the death of the 86-year-old cleric, declaring that one of the most evil people in history is dead, and explicitly stating that the ultimate goal of this devastating military campaign is nothing short of total regime change. Let that sink in. The United States and Israel are currently engaged in an active, kinetic war aimed at toppling the government of Iran. The sheer scale of what unfolded on Saturday, February 28, 2026, is staggering. At roughly 8:10 in the morning, Tehran time, broad daylight, a swarm of Israeli fighter jets, guided by highly sophisticated, pinpoint intelligence provided by the United States CIA, breached Iranian airspace. They targeted a heavily fortified leadership compound right in the heart of Tehran. In a breathtakingly precise window of just 60 seconds, 30 bombs rained down on the facility. The strike was designed for total annihilation. Ayatollah Khamenei was killed instantly, alongside approximately 40 other top-tier Iranian leaders. We are talking about the complete decapitation of Iran's military and political elite in a single minute. The commander-in-chief of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the Iranian defense minister, the secretary of the Iranian National Security Council, all eliminated. Tragically, reports also confirm that members of Khamenei's own family, including a daughter, a son-in-law, a daughter-in-law, and a grandchild, perished in the devastating blasts. But the story does not end with the strike on Tehran. It only begins there. Within hours, the Islamic Republic unleashed its fury. In a massive, coordinated retaliatory wave, Iran fired hundreds of ballistic missiles and explosive-laden drones, not just at Israel, where a woman was killed in Tel Aviv, but across the entire Persian Gulf. The skies over the Middle East were set ablaze. American military bases and vital infrastructure in Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, and the United Arab Emirates were targeted. Explosions rocked the skies above Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and Doha. We are witnessing a regional war exploding in real time, with global markets bracing for catastrophic shocks, airlines canceling flights across the hemisphere, and the world holding its breath to see what happens next. Today, we are going to break down every single aspect of this historical turning point. We will examine the decades of painstaking intelligence gathering that led to that fatal 60-second window. We will look at the immediate, terrifying fallout across the Gulf. We will analyze the political vacuum left in Iran, a country that has known only two supreme leaders since its revolution in 1979. And we will explore the terrifying reality of what a U.S.-led campaign for regime change actually means for the 89 million people living in Iran and the billions more watching globally. Settle in, because the world as we knew it on Friday no longer exists. Chapter 1. The Decapitation Strike and the Intelligence Web. To understand the magnitude of what happened on Saturday morning, we have to look at the meticulous, almost obsessive level of intelligence gathering that preceded it. This was not a crime of opportunity. It was a culmination of an operation that was literally decades in the making. The assassination of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei represents the absolute pinnacle of modern espionage, combining the vast, high-tech surveillance apparatus of the United States with the deep, lethal human intelligence networks cultivated by Israel on the ground inside Iran. For months, the CIA had been running a highly classified tracking operation on Khamenei and his inner circle. According to intelligence veterans, building a profile on a target like the Supreme Leader is like assembling a giant jigsaw puzzle. Every single aspect of his life was monitored, They tracked his daily routines, his dietary habits, the movements of his security detail, his family members, and even the disposal of his trash. In our modern, hyperconnected world, every action leaves a digital, physical, or behavioral footprint. The CIA and Israeli intelligence layered these footprints to create a predictive model of Khamenei's movements. The breakthrough came when intelligence indicated that a highly sensitive meeting of the Iranian security echelon was scheduled for Saturday morning at a specific leadership compound in downtown Tehran. The CIA was able to confirm, with a devastating degree of certainty, not only that the meeting was taking place, but that Ayatollah Khamenei himself would be in attendance. The timing of the strike was as shocking as the target. For years, the general assumption among military analysts was that if Israel were to strike the Iranian leadership, it would happen under the cover of darkness. Instead, they opted for a massive, wildly bold daytime attack. At 8:10 in the morning, right at the start of the Iranian work week, and notably, during the Muslim holy month of Ramadan, Israeli jets crossed into Iranian airspace. They achieved complete tactical surprise. The execution took just 1 minute, 60 seconds to alter the course of history. When the dust settled over the rubble of the Tehran compound, the architect of Iran's modern proxy network, the man who had ordered the violent repression of countless Iranian citizens, and the absolute ruler of the Islamic Republic, was dead. The sheer volume of casualties among the Iranian high command is difficult to overstate. This was a decapitation strike in the truest sense of the word. Israel confirmed the elimination of the commander of the Revolutionary Guard Corps, the defense minister, and the secretary of the Iranian Security Council. By wiping out the top tier of the military and political apparatus simultaneously, the United States and Israel intended to plunge the Iranian state into immediate paralysis, stripping it of its decision-makers at the exact moment it needed them most. Chapter 2. The rationale, the timing, and the American strategy. Why now? Why? After decades of animosity, proxy battles, and nuclear brinkmanship, did the United States and Israel pull the trigger on a direct assassination of a sovereign head of state? The official justification provided by the Trump administration hinges on two main arguments: preemptive defense and the ultimate eradication of the Iranian nuclear threat. In classified briefings, U.S. officials claimed they had actionable intelligence indicating that Iran was preparing a preemptive strike against American targets overseas using conventional weapons and missiles. According to this narrative, the United States had to strike first to neutralize an imminent threat to American lives. However, the broader context is impossible to ignore. This attack comes during a renewed period of intense negotiations. Just days before the strike, diplomats in Geneva, mediated by Oman, were engaged in indirect talks regarding Iran's nuclear program. Reports suggest that Iran had even tabled proposals to suspend uranium enrichment for several years. The decision to launch a massive military assault while these talks were actively unfolding signifies a complete and total abandonment of diplomacy. The Trump administration has clearly calculated that arms control treaties and negotiations are dead ends, and that the only way to ensure the security of the United States and Israel is to violently dismantle the current Iranian government. President Trump's rhetoric leaves no room for ambiguity. He has explicitly stated that the heavy and pinpoint bombing will continue uninterrupted throughout the week, or as long as necessary, to achieve regime change. He directly addressed the Iranian people, telling them to stay inside while the bombs drop, and urging them to take over their government once the military campaign concludes. He framed the assassination as justice for thousands of Americans and global citizens harmed by Iranian proxies, and as a liberation mission for the Iranian people who have suffered under the regime's brutal crackdowns. But taking out a leader does not automatically topple a regime. The Islamic Republic is a deeply entrenched, multi-layered ideological system. While the top leadership has been wiped out, the vast bureaucracy of the Revolutionary Guard, the basic paramilitary forces, and the clerical establishment still exist. The U.S. strategy seems to rely on a hope that the shock and awe of this decapitation strike will cause the regime's security forces to fracture, lose the will to fight, and ultimately collapse from within. It is a massive, high-stakes gamble with millions of lives hanging in the balance. Chapter 3. The Ring of Fire, Iran's immediate retaliation. The assumption that Iran would simply absorb this blow and crumble was shattered within hours. The Islamic Republic, despite losing its supreme leader and top generals, demonstrated that its offensive capabilities remain highly lethal. The response was swift, widespread, and terrifyingly indiscriminate. Almost immediately, Iran launched a massive barrage of ballistic missiles and explosive-laden drone swarms. But they did not just target Israel. In a clear message that the entire region would burn with them, Iran targeted American military installations and infrastructure across its Arab neighbors. The Persian Gulf turned into a war zone. Missiles rained down on Israel, with air raid sirens blaring across the country. A 50-year-old woman was killed in central Tel Aviv, marking the first Israeli fatality of the specific campaign, and over 100 others were injured. But the most alarming escalation was Iran's willingness to strike U.S. allies. Qatar, which hosts a massive Al Udeid air base, the largest U.S. military facility in the region, was targeted by dozens of missiles and drones. Bahrain, home to the U.S. Navy's Fifth Fleet, confirmed missile strikes on its territory. Kuwait, Jordan, and the United Arab Emirates all reported being targeted. In Dubai and Abu Dhabi, global hubs of commerce and tourism, residents were shaken by the sound explosions as air defense systems struggled to intercept the incoming barrage. Smoke was seen rising near iconic landmarks. By striking these economic powerhouses, Iran is signaling that if its regime is to be destroyed, the global economy will suffer the consequences. This retaliatory wave highlights the terrifying reality of this conflict. Israel possesses incredibly sophisticated air defenses, but they are not impenetrable, and the Gulf states, heavily reliant on U.S. protection, now find themselves directly in the crosshairs of Iranian ballistic missiles. The United States has rushed to deploy additional assets, utilizing for the first time its own advanced drone systems to hunt down Iranian launch sites. But the sheer volume of projectiles filling the sky means that further civilian casualties and massive infrastructure damage are almost inevitable. Chapter 4. The Vacuum and the Future of Iran. Inside Iran, the situation is a complex mixture of profound shock, forced mourning, and localized celebrations. The government has declared 40 days of public mourning and a 7-day nationwide public holiday. State television broadcasts endless footage of grieving citizens, framing Khamenei as a martyr who stood against global arrogance. But beneath the surface of mandated grief, the reality is far more fractured. Footage circulating on restricted social media channels shows a different side of Iran. Citizens reacting with disbelief, laughter, and even celebration at the news of the supreme leader's demise. For the millions of Iranians who have suffered under the regime's draconian laws, who saw their children killed in the streets during the democracy protests of recent years, and who watched their economy disintegrate under global sanctions, the death of Ali Khamenei represents a glimmer of hope, however dangerous that hope may be. Yet, a power vacuum in a heavily armed, deeply authoritarian state is an incredibly dangerous thing. Khamenei ruled for 35 years. He was the ultimate arbiter of all state affairs, second only to God in the eyes of his hardline supporters. He carefully cultivated a system of governmental agencies and clerical bodies designed to balance each other out, leaving him as the undisputed center of gravity. With him gone, that center has vanished. In the immediate term, state media reports that a transitional council comprising President Masoud Pezeshkian, the head of the judiciary, and a jurist from the Guardian Council will oversee the country. Officially, the Assembly of Experts, an 88-member body of Islamic scholars, is tasked with selecting the next supreme leader. However, many geopolitical analysts believe the real power struggle will happen behind closed doors within the ranks of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. The IRGC controls vast swathes of the Iranian economy and possesses the country's most potent military hardware. With the civilian government deeply unpopular and the clerical establishment weakened by Khamenei's sudden death, the IRGC may seize this moment to drop the facade of clerical rule entirely and establish a full-blown military dictatorship. The question now is whether the remaining generals of the IRGC will double down on regional warfare to rally the country, or if internal divisions will cause the security apparatus to fracture, exactly as the U.S. administration hopes. The aftermath and the world on edge. As we draw this analysis to a close, we must recognize that we have entered uncharted territory. The rules of engagement that have governed the Middle East for the last 40 years have been completely incinerated. The United States and Israel have crossed the Rubicon by directly assassinating the head of state of the Islamic Republic of Iran, launching an open war for regime change. The international community is scrambling to respond. The United Nations Security Council convened an emergency session highlighting the deep global divide. The United States defended its actions as lawful and necessary to prevent a nuclear-armed Iran, while allies of Tehran, including Russia and China, fiercely condemned the strikes as unprovoked acts of armed aggression that violate Iranian sovereignty. The United Nations Secretary-General has pleaded for an immediate halt to the hostilities, but those pleas seem to be falling on deaf ears in Washington, Jerusalem, and Tehran. The economic implications are equally terrifying. Global markets are holding their breath, watching the Strait of Hormuz. A third of the world's seaborne oil passes through this narrow choke point. If a desperate Iranian regime decides to mine the strait or attack commercial shipping, we could see a global energy crisis that cripples economies worldwide. For the Iranian people, the coming days and weeks will be the most perilous in their modern history. They are caught between a brutal, deeply entrenched regime that will likely become even more paranoid and repressive in its fight for survival, and a massive U.S.-Israeli bombing campaign that promises freedom but currently delivers fire and destruction from the sky. The next 40 days of mandated mourning in Iran will be a crucible. Will the regime use this time to consolidate power and unleash unprecedented violence against its own people and its neighbors? Or will the cracks in the foundation of the Islamic Republic finally cause the entire structure to collapse? President Trump has promised that the military campaign will continue uninterrupted. Israel is actively striking targets in the heart of Tehran as we speak. Iran is continuing to fire ballistic missiles across the Gulf. This is a rapidly evolving, highly volatile situation, and the consequences will reverberate for generations. I want to thank you for joining me for this extensive analysis. In times of such profound global crisis, understanding the history, the strategy, and the human cost is more important than ever. I will continue to monitor the situation around the clock. Would you like me to provide a detailed breakdown of the specific military assets being used by both sides in this escalating conflict?